Welcome to the Ember Igniters podcast, the podcast that sets your soul ablaze. I'm Fran Malfer here with my co-host, Jenna Wilmers, and we're your Ember Igniters. You know, Jenna, several years ago, I got kind of hooked on this TV show that was about individuals whose house was over-cluttered and they were totally kind of overwhelmed. So this TV program brought individuals in who were professionals.
Was it like the Hoarder Show?
Kind of like that.
Okay.
I can't remember the name actually.
Oh.
But what I really enjoyed about this film is that they would come in and so you'd have maybe a bedroom that had become the catch-all or a dining room that no longer you could see the table on, you know, that kind of thing.
I think it's so true for a lot of people.
I mean, we all have junk drawers, I know.
Yeah.
So what was really great about it, though, is that as they were trying to empty out the room, they had out in the front yard 3 piles. And these 3 piles were the keep pile, it was the sell pile, and the trash.
I remember that show. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so they would just come and unload all this stuff, but they were very sensitive to the homeowner or the individual. And so as they were going through, they were saying, okay, what do you think? Should we trash this? Should we, keep this? Whatever. And if it was a keep that really should have been a sell or trash, they would ask this really important question. And I love the co-host would say, so why is this so important to you?
And they always said, well, it was my mom's and it means so much to me. And so it's always like the sentimental value.
Truly. And I think that's what I really enjoyed. What really struck me was how emotional people would become about things that, we'd say, well, just toss that out. When are you ever going to use that? That kind of thing. But,
well, we were saving it for later.
That's exactly why, right? And that's what a lot of times they said. Well, I could use it later. And they're like, when was the last time, right? But what was really also incredible is that after they did all of that and helped that person get through the emotional detachment that needed to come with some of the items, not all of them, they literally had a clean slate to work with. And I love that when they brought the homeowner back after they had gone in, used the things that they wanted to keep, added a few things, and totally redesigned the space. You could see the joy on the person's face. And it really had to do more, not so much about, the cleaning of the room, as it was about thinking about those individual things that they had cluttered up their life with.
And who would have thought that, these designers were so good because they were able to put in all of the stuff that they were keeping.
That's right.
To incorporate that into something, that's a hard job, but they always did amazing with that. And it was very impressive.
It really was. And that's the part about cleaning out a cluttered home is that it gives you that ability to restart, right? To make space for new things, because whatever they sold, they had money and cash in hand, so they were ready to maybe add a new lamp or something, something like that. So new things could also come in.
I forgot they did that.
Yeah, it was really a very good thing. So I just was thinking about how our lives emulate that as well, what it looks like for us.
Today's episode is all about the power of letting go to level up. Ditch the baggage of your past self. Oh, that's a big one.
It's a long title, but it's such an important issue for all of us.
It really is. And like these people who wanted to unclutter their house per se, they had to come to some sort of realization, right? That they had to change.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
But I think it took them so long because a lot of people like where they are.
Wow, isn't that just the real truth? I don't think they even saw it anymore as clutter in their home. It was just the way things were.
I agree with you. And because it's the way, my mic, because of the way, it was the thing, the way, I can't talk today too, which is also funny. Because it was the way things were, they also saw it as an overwhelming thing. So it's kind of like, when you're overwhelmed, you don't know where to start.
That's really, really the truth. And maybe that's why a lot of us don't also move in the direction of, where do we start or how do we begin to let go of things in our life that no longer serve a real purpose for us. They've become outdated or whatever they are. But what I kind of enjoy is the fact that there's this ability, when asked the proper question or having the proper reflection time, there is always an answer. They always gave, you could say, it's an heirloom, or I kept it because I thought I might use it sometime later. So there's always a story that goes along with the very things that they need to let go of. And I know I've had stories like that in my life as well, where I thought, oh, this is who I'm supposed to be.
I wonder how many of those people actually left it that way and didn't reclutter it. It'd be interesting to see, because we turn back to what we know in the familiar so much, and
we do.
Causes us to repeat the same patterns and whatnot. And I remember repeating the same patterns in my life and almost looking back and going, the common denominator in all of this is me. And I hated, I laugh now, but I hated that realization that, like, oh yeah, it is me. Sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes it was circumstances or circumstances I would put myself in.
Sure.
But it was my choice at that point.
Well, I think that's a thing that most of us can. I identify with you because we've been on this same journey together for some time. And the honest thing is that it's not just that. It's we wrap our whole self into what's going on in our lives. So I had this sense when I was growing up of, and it wasn't that it was, said like this is what the plan is, but there was in my growing up, my parents were very work oriented, work ethics. If you had a job, you did it to the best that you could. You were serving your employer. You were serving whatever job you had. And so also because of that work ethic, it was also something that I knew that when I got out of school, that was going to be something I was going to have to do. So I put on in my identity, based on all of these experiences that I had, this ability to say, well, I'm going to serve people. It's important to me. That was my identity of sorts. So everything I did from that perspective was to serve people.
Like every job you had, everything.
Everything.
Oh, wow.
I saw it that way. And so it was kind of like when you have unspoken expectations, you pick them up and you think, oh, that's what I have to do.
Do those unspoken expectations also turn into like your internal belief system?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know that they were belief systems, but it was definitely the thing that made me understand that this was the course, if you want to say it, of my life. Being kind of in that place that this is what you have to do.
I think our belief system, I think a lot of people can relate to that. It trips them up. And like, for an example, there might be somebody out there who has a belief that success is having that high paying job or the prestigious job, and things like that. And so that's success to them. So they spend all their years climbing the corporate ladder and doing the thing to get there.
Sure.
Kind of like you in the serving, right? And then as you get older and more experienced and down the road, you meet other people, and those people are happy and fulfilled, and they kind of just have some, like, an aura of them, right? And then you're kind of like, I want what they're on. But they're not on anything. They're just, it's their aura that they give off and their vibes that they give, and you're like, wow, how do I get that? And I just find it interesting because, like, when these, successful people who are feeling burnt out or just kind of unfulfilled in their life,
Yeah.
and just like, oh, this is just not where I want to be stuck, that sort of thing. And then they meet these people who are fulfilled, and I mean, if you're fulfilled, you're typically happy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have a great outlook on life, and you just sit there and go, well, how did they get that?
Yeah.
When, I went on this trajectory. Well, we all define success differently.
That's right. It's really true. I mean, in today's society, we have a lot of people that we could emulate.
Yes.
Some good, some not so good, but there's entrepreneurial people, and you go, well, what makes them have that, drive to start something new, or maybe you've got people who are musical artists, and we can see it. Young girls want to look like their favorite musical star, or guys sometimes do the same. So it starts to, our belief system is tied then to our own identity.
It is.
Yeah.
So when we want to create a new version of ourselves, it seems very hard.
Yes, it does.
Or to make a change. But why is it so hard to shed an identity?
Well, I think it's because we've developed this comfort in, we've crafted ourselves. I certainly know what that was like. I know it's just what I did. It was who I thought I was. I really worked at being the person I thought I needed to be.
Well, and I also think that, like, we wrap our identities into it because we like it. I think back to myself where I joined a veteran service organization to volunteer. Well, you know me, I like to break things down.
Yes.
And when you break down volunteering to its core, the reason people volunteer is to feel important. And I mean, I didn't really think about it like this until after I was, stepping away from the organization. And I really started to go through kind of this turmoil inside and really trying to figure out why. Why was I really like this? And this is when I came to this realization. And I learned that I had wrapped my whole identity into this volunteering role.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I liked it when people came to me and asked me for the answer or advice. And the more I did that, the more I rose in leadership and things like that. So again, I felt powerful in that. And I mean, it wasn't really powerful of anything. I mean, really. And I just really... it was my social club. It was a way to get out of the house. It was a way to talk to other adults instead of raising my son. Meaning moms struggle with having adult conversations because when you're raising your children,
So true.
you're only talking to the kid all day, right?
Yes.
So you need that adult conversation.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's what I mean about my social club. It was the thing that helped me. And so for me to let it go at the time that I did was very hard because I was going to lose all of that.
Right, right. I mean, I think about, all of my work history. I certainly wrapped my identity based on the fact that I understood that whatever I was going to do was going to have to serve people.
Yeah.
It was sort of an unspoken thing. And it's weird how it's almost like some people get real truthful, spoken words like, you should do this, or you're never going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But mine was very subtle, sort of a background, and that may be true for a lot of you, where you're thinking, I don't know what they're talking about, but it's those subtle things that sometimes you can't let go of because you don't even know.
Well, they're like slippery slopes.
Yeah.
I mean, you start down it, and the next thing you're farther and farther, and then until then you wake up one day and realize it, and you're like, oh, how did I make it to the bottom of the hill?
It's really true. It's really true.
it's all shaped by, societal expectations or even the conditioning of our past. I also believe that it's part of the emotional weight of who we think we should be.
Wow, that to me is probably, for me, that's the highest thing. That's what I did, is I really worked at crafting a sort of a persona.
Interesting.
Based on those sort of unspoken things, because that's what I thought everyone did.
Well, I mean, this day and age, it's so easy to create a persona. Look at social media. I mean, that's what we do, right? I mean, we get on there, we hide behind our computer, and we curate this whole world with a facade. And we can, we can make it seem like we have this most amazing life when really behind the scenes it's
chaos or whatever.
Right.
I mean, we all sort of put those masks on.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's hard for us to be vulnerable if we've had a bad experience. So all of those experiences, they're stored. And one of the things is that you don't even realize. I did not realize that I was putting on this role or this persona. I literally believed that it was all about who I felt I needed to be. Sort of, working through just this was what was expected, so I did it for approval.
I think that expectedness is a interesting word because it's like, well, who really expects you to do that?
I think that's a great question because I didn't know I was doing it. And I think that I put that on myself. Based on my past, I had things that were part of my past that made me believe that. Kind of come into a belief.
So your perception.
Yeah, my perception of everything. So, like I wanted to be a teacher. That was one of the things that I really wanted to be. And so I can easily go into what is considered a teaching mode. And just kind of becoming, I'd hate to say the word, but it was pointed out to me that I was being condescending. Now, that's a hard word to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't even actually realize it until someone said it to me, someone close to me who I trusted. I will say that. I don't believe you just take every word from every stranger because some people don't know you well enough to understand the context in which you're working.
Yeah. I also think it's being open to hearing it too.
It is.
Because, I mean, there's been times when people have told me things a couple times, and then I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
People that I didn't really, their words didn't really carry weight in my life. And then someone close to me would say it, and then I'd be like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think part of that is that we don't want to face ourselves.
Well, who does?
Well, for real. Yeah.
I mean, looking in the mirror is not an easy thing to do. I think intellectually you can do that, but emotionally it's very difficult.
It is. It's very difficult. I remember when I was younger, I had the perception that I always wanted to be the boss. And it was because the perception that I had was that, oh, you get to tell people what to do. Well, I wanted to tell them what to do, but really to like have an impact in the world. It was not to be like just to be bossy per se.
Right.
And that's how it's also depicted on TV that, the boss made the decision and tells people what to do and they did it, that sort of thing. And so that's what I learned it to be. And so I would go into these places of my life and I would want to be commanding and want to be the boss and be in charge. Or on the sports team, be the captain. So that I could, lead like the stretching and all that stuff because I thought that was a way to be important again and to be needed. And people started telling me that, like, I was domineering.
Ooh, that's not a good word sometimes.
No.
It's a kind of negative connotation to it.
Well, when I learned the word, because when someone told me that, I didn't even know what the word was. I had to go look it up, and it hit me to the core, especially because I didn't know what the word meant. And just hearing that word, seeing it on the page, it was gut-wrenching. And I really had to think to myself, like, why would somebody, or people, really, why would they believe that about me? That, like, don't they know me?
I have said that I don't know how many times. Like, you know me. Why do you think that that's what I'm doing? Because you think that if someone really knows you, they understand the motivation behind. And but they don't always.
True.
I think that when you said that being, the boss gave you a sense of control, well, think about it. Being a teacher,
right?
It's like telling a class, read these chapters, do this thing. I know more than you do. Oh, bad. Yeah. And I never saw it that way. I saw, I had these teachers that were feeding me information, and I wanted to be one of those kinds of people. But they were doing it on my behalf, not for themselves. And I was thinking more along the lines of, I could be this, and this.
Well, and when you think about it, leading is building up other people.
It is. It really should be.
I mean,
right.
It's all about growing them and building them up. And I think that, unfortunately, with, the way that society and our past, like, shapes our identity, when we step into that defined role, and sometimes it's, defined for us. I mean, it could be a caretaker, an achiever. You could be that rebel or a peacemaker. It's all, and we've even said it in our stories, not even probably meaning to, but it kind of resonated, but to feel meaningful and purposeful. Well, some people, they don't like to challenge the status quo because their self-worth is wrapped into their identity. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's crazy in one sense, but then on the other hand, it seems logical, doesn't it? Given what we kind of know about how our brains operate, those various things. But the truth is, our identity shouldn't be wrapped up in all of that.
It shouldn't be, and you're absolutely right, because our self-worth is really influenced by how we are seen by others and whether we feel like we belong. And it has nothing to do with our identity and who we are.
No, and that's the humanness of who we are. We're, even when we're on a healing journey, truthfully, it's hard to remember that. That's why it's a journey. It's like we're coming back to it. And so, self-worth is such an important thing. Also, a lot of people call it self-esteem.
Yes.
So that's something that all of us have to work through in order to clean out space for new things to start happening for us.
Well, and I also think it goes back to when you start questioning any type of norm, right? You start feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not living up to these external expectations.
That's right. That's really true. And unfortunately, that becomes like a ball and chain on us. And so by getting rid of that concept, really understanding that difference, there is a freedom in that.
There is. Absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that true growth really comes from those valleys and the experience and things. And if you stay in your comfort zone, as we say, what are you really experiencing? You're not going to grow. You're not going to get any bigger. And you are basically just, to me, you're kind of just pressured into that box you put yourself in.
And I think I think a lot of us know that we're in a box. I mean, sometimes we say we don't understand that we are playing roles, but we know when we're in a box.
We do. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that what you say is true. Growth comes when we can separate out those two identities, if you want to call them that, your self worth and who you really truly are. So it's an important aspect of personal growth to come into that understanding that you are more than whatever box you think you're in.
Absolutely.
So knowing about this box, there's a really important question that we should be pondering on, which is, why is it so hard for us to let go of our past?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with our brain and how our brain works. So in our brains, we studies have shown, so yeah, this isn't Jenna speaking, right? That our brain treats memories of the past as part of itself, okay? And so in that, there's a part of our brain called the hippocampus. And that's the part of your brain that stores all of your memories, and it kind of puts them and organizes them and everything like that. And that part of the brain is very closely connected to the part of the brain that is linked to self-perception.
Wow.
So kind of making them as one, where we see ourselves, our past selves, as part of who we are. And that is why life changes feel so personal and are so hard for us, because we feel like we are changing who we are when really that's not the case.
And that's a hard thing, to think you have to reinvent yourself.
Oh, yes.
Because it's not really true.
Well, and you also think you got to start over from the beginning. And it's
Who
not
wants to
true.
do that?
Well, right.
Yeah.
It's just changing the trajectory and doing something different. We kind of experienced that ourselves when we decided that, okay, we want to make a change in our life.
Right.
So we started a side hustle. And that side hustle is this organization. We were both working jobs and doing the 9-to-5 thing there, and then working on this in the off hours. And so we did that for about 1.5 years before we even moved into this full time.
Yeah, and that was an interesting 1.5 years, because what it was is driving our emotions and getting us so excited about the potential of what we're going to be doing. So it's really about, how do you then take all of that info and rewrite your own story, relaunch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you have to launch, you have to relaunch.
Yeah.
Which is meaning there are things you're going to keep, just like in the early story, things that you're going to maybe sell off and use whatever you gain from that experience. And then there's the new things, the things that you're going to put into it that are new because you've developed that space for it.
Okay.
So, I think there's a lot of things that we have to let go of. So one of the biggest ones is our personal version of our old self.
I mean, everybody wants something new, right? So that should be easy. I mean, I know we joke now and say it's funny and it's easy, but we get it. We get that it's hard to shed an identity, as we both had them, curated them, and manage them. So.
Yeah, it reminds me of the story that I read about, a snake. I'm not usually a fan of reptiles, to be honest with you, but I had no idea that snakes shed their skin for purpose. I always thought it was just like once a year, like we have scales that come off of us when we wash our face. Well, in fact, what's happening is that as the snake is growing, the skin that they have isn't flexible enough to grow with them. And so they shed that off in order for new growth to begin to happen. So as their inward parts are growing, this skin is coming off and a brand new skin is coming on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, isn't that a little bit of what we're saying to do? It's like, take off that old version of yourself and get excited about what that new version could look like.
Right. Well, and the new version could look like, maybe it's your turn to start a podcast and step into the voice that you've been, suppressing for years. Or maybe it's going back to school after, years of putting it off.
Exactly.
There's many different side hustles of how it looks different to relaunch your story and live who you were meant to be.
We have this little standing joke here, especially because in the early part of doing this work, I told the story of Colonel Sanders. And I got real detailed and carried on quite a long time. But the truth of the matter is that he didn't start doing something until he was 65.
Right.
He'd been preparing and doing a lot of different things all along. But he made that choice to continue no matter what. So obviously, we have this wonderful age difference where we can say, well, I learned this here, and you can help me do a lot of different things. So maybe you're a latent author.
Yes.
You know, I mean, maybe that's something you want to do, and you just thought it wasn't possible.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, we say this a lot, and then we said it even in the last episode. A lot of people look at the big elephant, right?
Yes.
And so when you're looking at the book and you're like, oh my gosh, the thought of sitting down to write the book is so overwhelming. But if you sit down and write a little bit at a time and at least get your stories and ideas into words and on the paper, you never know what can formulate. I mean, we're writing a book. It's not done by any means, but we're at least writing it so that we are ready for the opportunity when it comes.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. We are available for our speaking engagements, such as retreats or conferences. You can reach out to us at pursueyourfire.com. Thank you for tuning in. Ignite your life.
And go out and set the world on fire.